What is love? How do we define love? If, in the definition that you are using, love is only impulses interpreted by your brain. On this episode of Arcturian Philosophy, we're going to delve into the very interesting topic: what is real love? Many people confuse love and sex. I find this the most common problem with accessing the love source. Light is integral to accessing that which is real love, or at least love which holds any kind of power. You could say, very simply, that the love that you experience for the most part in a sexual encounter, particularly if it's a one-night stand, an orgy, or anything in between those two, or you randomly got horny and jumped on top of your partner, that is very similar to the electrical impulses interpreted by your brain, like Morpheus in the Matrix. But the light source produces also another kind of love. Is this love the same love that you experience with sex? Yes and no. That love can exist there, the love that is congruent with the light source, but only really if you bring it in, or if you experience it as something of an accident or just a slight spark of that true light. In order to experience true love, I don't mean that as your romantic partner. I mean true love in your heart. You can call that your heart chakra, you could just say your heart, whatever feels best to you. In order to experience that kind of true love, one must bring themselves into the space of the light. This is not exactly usually a pleasant process to go through. But is it worth it? Oh yes. Oh yes, it is. So, how do we distinguish between ourselves? Am I really feeling unconditional love? That is the love of the light source. It is an unconditional love. It is not a love that exists, for example, with your partner and something happens and you break up. It does not work that way with the light source. The love that emanates from it, which, like I've said, is in a duality. They are in a duality with each other. How do I know that? Because Cryon told me when I was imprisoned at a hospital being experimented upon, the way I survived and got out. One of those reasons was because Cryon told me that, yes, Krista, you see in the book, love is the source of the universe, but I wasn't able to put in there that light is in a duality with it and must exist with it for all of these things to work. That's what's missing out of my book 12. It was being told that allowed me to begin to understand this concept. How do we distinguish? What you can definitely do for yourself is think to yourself, well, what if my parents were trying to assassinate me, possibly stop my internet connection, murdered my unborn child in some sort of satanic ritual? And if you can still say I love them in a space that you might feel this viscerally. I feel this like a visceral sensation in my chest. You may or may not feel that. If you don't feel it, there's nothing wrong with you. For me, it just happened at random, and I thought, oh, you mean there's actually a feeling there and everything? You can also distinguish between butterflies in your stomach. That's in your stomach. Butterflies in your stomach and the feeling of intense, radiating, swirling life, which is also in tandem with love here at the heart center. Life exists because love of the true light source exists. Without light, without the love that emanates from it, no life is truly possible. Think about it. In some cultures or species, murder, crime, rape, lying, and every lower emotion that the Apostle Paul mentions, greed, anger, lust, envy, fear. In those societies, life is constantly dying. On this planet, life has been dying because we have negated love. What we all need to do is bring it back. But we have to bring it back in its true nature, in its true unveiled nature. What is love? Love is life. Life, which is light, which is love. All in the same. All in a nice wrapped up Christmas package for you. In what I've experienced, having been born as an indigo child, it's normal for those types of children, when they're born that way, to understand this concept of love. But then it's also easy for us to fly into a rage over something. Why? Because we understand that we're in some kind of system where the love is dying, where the life is dying because the love is dying. If we cannot sustain the love of the light source, then we cannot sustain life anywhere. It simply cannot exist. This is what we are being faced with on this planet right now. We're being faced with a choice. Are we going to open our hearts to the real love that can only be accessed through the light source? Regardless of how much of that light source we can tolerate inputting, or not, even just the tiniest little spark seems to be enough to start the process along. Or we can decide, no, I'm only going to be focused strictly on myself, and it's dog eat dog out there. Literally, for me. And it's all one man for himself. And while that might seem like a good philosophy, here in Arcturian philosophy, one must understand that in order to actually sustain your own life, you must think in a different fashion. You must create a frequency that is of a different fashion. That is part of the reason I am here to help with this. Were it not for the different things I just described at the beginning of this video that I had gone through Yes, I went through all of those. I would not have come into this newer place where I could begin to exercise love in the middle of a hurricane. In the eye of a hurricane, there is complete peace. How do we access that love of the light source? The first thing is simply your desire. It can be, I want that, but I don't know how to get it. I don't know how to get it. I envy this girl who can do it and it just happened like that. Or even if it doesn't happen like that, she somehow figures it out. Because I know a majority of my audience are of those who I speak of who have attempted to harm me and murder me, murder my son. But that first step is your desire for it. Knowing that it exists at first. How do you know it exists? Well, you have an example walk around for you. That example can be me here. It is me. Here in this area, the San Francisco Bay Area, or rather right next to Chevron, particularly someone right next to Chevron, the headquarters, to show this kind of love to be possible. Well, you say perhaps, I want that. I want that, and now I'm going into an angry or fearful loop of thinking. All right, we'll do that. You've got the first part down, which is, I want that. Focus on the intention. I'll give a quick example. When I was extremely physically weak, and I'm still building back strength, I had a feeling come over me thinking, I want my house to be clean, but I don't feel strong enough to do it, to clean. But I want my house to be clean. And the feeling came over me to simply sit in a meditative position and ask for energy or ask for strength. After about 5 minutes, I got up all of a sudden and I saw, oh, I can clean now. I didn't feel tired anymore, unable to complete the tasks. In this same way, even if that love feels impossible for many of you who are in the dark to reach, you know the drill of sitting in whatever style of meditative position you prefer, and simply meditate on the thought, I want, or I would like, or I would prefer, whichever works the best for you in your situation. I would prefer, it's probably better for most of my viewers here, I would prefer to find that love that Krista is talking about, that she says comes from this light that I can't really see very well. Or I can see it, but then it blinds me and burns me and all kinds of things if I come into contact with it. Do this meditation of simply sitting quietly and wanting the love that is of the light source. This is meant specifically for species other than humans, but because obviously humans will be watching this at some point, I assume, for those of us that self-identify as human, sit in whatever meditative position. You can also simply lie down. If this is the easiest thing for you, no matter what, across any species. If it's the easiest thing for you to just sit there in whatever position you want, or lie down, or anything, do that. But I've noticed that the effect has been stronger for me if I actually sit in a kind of meditative position. That's a strengthening of your intention. It's showing in a way that you are more serious about it, you could say, or you are making a more serious effort by making yourself sit in a Zen position or a lotus position and actually sitting there and thinking, I want this love from the light source. I want this love from the light source. I want this love from the light source. If you happen to enjoy numerology, you can do this in whatever varied numerological fashion you prefer. That could be repetitions of 3, that could be repetitions of 8, that could be whatever you happen to prefer the most. And after your desire alone is sent out into the universe will begin giving you ways to respond. But you have to take the openings as they come. And the universe obviously isn't going to get mad at you if it sends somebody your way, for example, like me, who's had to figure this out and is still figuring it out. Or sends you into a situation where you experience something terrible, and that is a catalyst, a trigger to pull forth this love. I would say that would be more applicable to those that identify as human for this. For those that don't identify as human with this, getting yourself put into a situation where something's stolen from you, or you're backstabbed, maybe literally, or something along those lines, would be a bit more likely to throw you into a rage. So see, the universe is not going to do something that it knows that you cannot accomplish. The universe is an intelligent organism. It is highly intelligent and knows what you need. A lot of those in the dark love the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want, but you will always get what you need. And I've noticed this actually to be quite true. You might see, for example, someone who's needing help outside. Maybe they have a physical impediment, or maybe they dropped their books. There is a way to express love. Random acts of kindness. Things of this nature. I know for many of the people who appear to currently not have as much as my best interest at heart, this is a rather difficult thing for you to do. If you perform a random act of kindness, well then that's got nothing in it for you, does it? Or does it? Well, there's nothing in that for me. I'm not going to be able to eat anything. I'm not going to be able to feed off anything. I don't get anything out of it, and it's just wasting my time. It's wasting my energy. But by saying that would be wasting my time, wasting your energy, well, you're actually quite right, because by not doing that, you are wasting your time alive, wasting your energy to stay alive, wasting everything that supports life. This does actually come down to something to do with survival. For those that are more based in a survivalist mindset, the best way for you to start with this might be thinking, wait a minute, her logic actually makes sense. We've done so many things to attempt to kill her. And she's staying alive, ultimately, out of this true, unconditional love that she says comes from that light source. Could there be something to that? Well, it doesn't matter. I have a 300-year lifespan, so... Well, you are eternal. You know that. And not to mention what happens after your 300-year lifespan in fiery lakes and such. Plato talks about the whole thing. It wasn't Plato, actually. It was Socrates talking about it. And those around him didn't quite know what to think. They didn't quite know how to believe him or not, but they knew that he was the wisest of them all because he knew nothing. And so now we take a look at this from 399 BC, and it still applies. Socrates even knew that the world was a globe, and they were saying, but it would fall out of the sky. And he was saying, no, the Earth is a globe. It's not flat. In 399 BC. To take examples from him, when he was on his deathbed, imprisoned, he began to converse with with the other prisoners, and with the guards. And the guard left the room weeping after delivering the poison for him to drink, which he took happily and merrily, and said to him, well, my good man, you are the expert in this. What must one do? What must I do here to kill myself effectively? Was what he was saying. He affected so many people because he had such a great degree of love. Now, does having this kind of love mean that you have to completely change who you are? No. We first find Socrates in a little dialogue skit called Euthyphro, where he's talking to a religious official, and he's questioning the religious official, saying, oh, could you please tell me what is righteousness? But he's actually messing around with the guy the entire time, and he knows it. He still goes around as his sarcastic self, his quick puns and quick wit, but at the same time, he emanated from him a beautiful love of the universe, of his earth, of everything that was around him. We could also compare this to, for some people they might like this, for some people maybe not, but Jesus. That would be the quintessential example of love on this planet. That is ultimately the way that I survived being imprisoned. And Jesus and Archangel Michael. Now, keep in mind that before this, I literally hated Jesus because I was raised in a milder form of satanic programming. And I didn't believe angels existed. After getting out of the whole thing and thinking I was brainwashed into this Christianity, I hate this Jesus person. I knew that he was a real person because I had been trained in all the historical reports that were not biblical. People that were atheists saying there was this guy and he walked around and did crazy stuff and his name was Jesus. There's enough historical evidence to prove that yes, the man Jesus lived, he existed on this earth at some point, around the exact time the Gospels state. But that doesn't have to be your example of love if it doesn't seem to be what floats your boat. I noticed while I was in prison, for example, that many people seemed to like Buddha. Now, while I've turned the phrase around for Buddha with life is suffering into life is joy, or love, or beauty, one thing Buddha did say about reincarnation when asked, but how could you, want to come back here? And he said, well, if you could see as much beauty as I see, then you would always want to come back here. And the only way he would have been able to see that kind of beauty would have been through the love that comes through the love light source. So accessing this love doesn't mean having to change who you are. It doesn't mean having to become something different if you don't want to. It doesn't mean being some sort of weird preacher or something else that you could think of that you might find weak or not akin to your likings. You can exhibit love like one particular counselor, or I would say prison guard perhaps, but they called themselves counselors in this hospitalized prison, where I asked him a simple question, and I knew the answer. I knew I needed to get something, and he said, go to so-and-so. I knew that was the wrong thing to do, and so I went to the person, and I said, they told me to come here. I know it's not the right thing. I'm sorry that you have to go through this. And she went over to him, and in a rather barking fashion, in a rather very, very much like she was barking at him, said, "Why would you be doing this? You know that this is not the correct way to. You know that no one like this would be doing that, etc. Or that you know that you did this wrong. Why are you doing that? Still." This was at a point where they'd figured out that they simply could not kill me. And after a few minutes, I saw him, walk around and pace around, and then I saw him come up to her, and I heard out of the corner of my ear, heard him say, "Oh, well, I'm sorry that I did that." And he began to apologize to her. And just starting with actions like these can begin to grow that which is love. But say, for example, if it's an apology, you have to actually be genuinely giving the apology, and you can't be thinking in the back of your head, I'm apologizing to you so that I can use you in the future. That right there just ruins the love concept entirely. And I would say go back in a circle, go back to simply sitting on the ground or lying in your bed or whatever you think you can get yourself to do, or pretty much whatever you can get yourself to do, and think, I want, in the sincerest fashion as you can. You can think of it like praying if you want. You can think of it just like I'm thinking this if you want. You can think of it in whatever fashion that best suits you. I want that love that Chris is talking about that comes from this light source. In the future, I'm going to be trying to examine some exact techniques to attempt to do this. I have not really discovered particular techniques for accomplishing this, but what has occurred in my life has catalyzed me to continually find it, to seek it out. And at first, I can say this is somewhat shameful to me, but at first, what catalyzed me to seek it out was just primal survival. I sat there in that hospital-type prison, and I said, how do I survive? And the two answers were Jesus and Archangel Michael. And I thought, okay, well, I hate Jesus, and I didn't think angels existed, but I'm going to try it. By the end, we know repeatedly of Michael, the reptilian, who looked at me intently and said, "You have to get out of here. You have to get out of here." He did not identify himself as a human at all. There was the other girl who really wanted my help. Finally, after realizing that she tried to kill herself so many times that she couldn't stand what she was doing. Even the counselors, as they called themselves, at different times, when it looked like they could get away with it, would begin to make comments as I would pace down the corridors at night. We would know why at night. I would be pacing at night with the Bible, reading peacefully. And they would begin to make subtle comments here and there about how what I was doing was such a beautiful, beautiful thing, and then do something that would harm me. But I would still see into the person, into the entity, that they were actually being very serious. This love is something that dissolves all boundaries. It is of the true source of the universe. And with that, all is possible, and all is one. Take these final words, knowing that that love out there, if you seek it, it can be yours. And I'm here to help you do it. Blessings on Arcturian Philosophy.